What's going on, everybody? C4, welcome back to the channel. Today we are recapping day one of the NFL Combine. We're going to talk about linebackers and defensive linemen, which are defensive tackles and edge rushers. For the big winners, the big losers, the I don't knows. I'll start with the I don't knows, plus Will Anderson, for example. I'm not even going to entertain the fact Will Anderson didn't have a freakish testing day. It was good. He had a good day. He's still my number one player in this draft. He's unstoppable. He's still an alien. He's still unblockable. He still had great 10-yard split. Will Anderson, he's untouchable. We're moving on. Same kind goes Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, number one, number two for this year's draft for a lot of people, excluding quarterbacks. Jalen Carter's case didn't get to test because obviously there's a lot going on there. So that's an I don't know. I don't know is for actually two players that I thought were going to test were Mazi Smith, the nose tackle from Michigan, was number one on Bruce Feldman's freak list this year for the best athletes in college football. He did put up 34 reps on the bench press today. I just saw that on Twitter right before I went live here. So that's good, but I would love to see him just test. I want to see how freaky of an athlete you are against the rest of the field, but we're going to have to wait till the pro day there, where I assume he's going to do the rest of the drills. Myles Murphy, the defensive end from Clemson. Another player getting mocked consistently in the first round, has first-round traits, probably better tape 2 years ago than it was this year. I didn't test. I wasn't sure. I thought he was expected to test. And Clemson Pro Day, I assume. We're just got to wait for that one. So let's get into the winners and losers, and let's talk about these guys. First up is Nolan Smith, who I must have just been in a bubble. I didn't think he was testing here today. I thought yesterday he was, I know he's coming off that injury that he had. I honestly thought he was just going to maybe do some on-field drills. He went out there and tested. So that was a pleasant surprise because he's like the number one guy everyone is talking about right now. Size concerns, sure, 6'2", 238, a little bit of a niche edge rusher, but everything else, speed grade is elite, explosion grade is elite. We are here on the Raz site, raz.football. Go check it out if you like what you see here today. Awesome site, S-tier site. Especially for kind of breaking down and trying to make sense of all these numbers and figures that come from the Combine. I have had Nolan Smith. Have you seen a couple of my Eagles mock drafts in terms of content? Maybe if I just post it on Twitter. Nolan Smith has been a popular player. I've had to go into the Philadelphia Eagles with pick 30. He's probably not going to stay there and last pick 30 anymore after this Combine. But the reason why is because I said he literally could play the Hassan Reddick edge rush role, right? And I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but yesterday, during the broadcast, they said Daniel Jeremiah was like Nolan Smith's comp, Hassan Reddick. You look at the Raz site, who they have a big database. They compare everybody's numbers here to like previous players. And surprise, surprise, Hassan Reddick is right there for the top comp for Nolan Smith. You also have another great Eagle in Trent Cole. Vic Beasley's there as well. You got Shakatoni, Davis Tall. But ultimately, the thing with Nolan Smith is I do think he's a fit for the Philadelphia Eagles, but you also got to understand that like Hassan Reddick kind of have a niche role in that defense. And I don't think it's as clear-cut as like any team that needs a defensive end, any team that needs a 3-4 edge. Nolan Smith is going to be a little bit of a niche player, still working on his game as a pass rusher. Yes, he's a 5-star recruit. He tested like a 5-star recruit, but only has 12.5 sacks in his career. Right now, he's much more of a see-ball, get-ball, pursuit, sideline-to-sideline run defender than he is a polished pass rusher. So I think he's going to have to, I don't know. It's one of those things, I don't know how far this Combine pushes him up. Before yesterday's Combine, my edge rankings, I made a tweet about this. Will Anderson far and away number one. And then at 2, Lucas Van Ness. 3, I had Nolan Smith. 4, I had Tyree Wilson. And then 5, I had B.J. Ojulari. That was kind of my top 5 going into yesterday at the Combine. I was slightly higher on Nolan Smith than some. But then again, if you go back to like the offseason before this year of college football started, Nolan Smith was up there. I don't know why people are like, who's this Georgia kid? Kind of like before the injuries, the injury concerns, and the lack of production, like he was still a 5-star recruit that was projected to be a first-round pick. I don't know why there was like this little period of people kind of forgot about Nolan Smith. People weren't considering Nolan Smith a first-round prospect, but like I've never really strayed off that path too much. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of a niche when it comes to Nolan Smith, and there's a reason why I've been mocking him to Philadelphia, because I think we have a track record of kind of niche edge rushers having success here. So I would love to hear what you guys think. How much do you think he really improved his stock? Is he going to be the second edge rusher off the board? Do you think he can eclipse Tyree Wilson, who seems to be almost consensus going there? Myles Murphy's in that conversation. Maybe Van Ness, potentially. I had Van Ness ahead of him a little bit. I'd love to hear what people think about his draft stock and potential. But obviously, elite athlete, but I do think you're getting more of a run defender right now than you are a pure pass rusher. But he was absolutely a winner yesterday. We have Mr. Kancey. Didn't fully test. Very niche. But he's, much like Nolan Smith. We're talking about the big winners, the guys that everyone is talking about. He is right there. Calijah Kancey out of Pittsburgh. Take a shot every time someone says he's, refers to him as Aaron Donald. For me, and this was, not just cheesing off some other comp, I didn't even really put it together. But Daniel Jeremiah said Ed Oliver. And I was like, you know what? I could buy into that. Ed Oliver. I mean, the elite grade for the 40, the 10-yard split was insane. I do think one of the things that's slightly annoying is that, people are gassing him up like it's, ridiculous. He's an undersized D tackle. He needed something like this. If he tested average, people would just completely write him off because he's 6'1", 281. They would ignore the fact 14.5 TFLs, 7.5 sacks last year, was 2022 ACC Defensive Player of the Year and a consensus All-American. But if he didn't test like this, it was going to be bad for him. Right now, the comps, you got Aaron Donald there, which, every one of their dogs is going to say. You got Ed Oliver down there at the bottom as well. I think, obviously, he's much more in line with Ed Oliver, right, than the best defensive player maybe the last 30 years in the NFL. But definitely improved his draft stock. Definitely going to be a niche interior pass rusher. I'm trying to think, even though, yes, Ed Oliver's the comp, I like to relate things to the Eagles. He's definitely going to be more that Javon Hargrave style pass rusher. What you can also do on this Raz site is you look at Kancey here, you're like, well, maybe some teams are going to use him as a defensive end, right? In a 3-4 front. Well, where does he kind of compare as a defensive end? Well, you can do that. So let's see what happens. So obviously his Raz is going to be incomplete. Well, when you go to a defensive end, the weight comes up a little bit. Everything else kind of shuffles. And the player comps are still we got Brock Lesnar on there. Calijah Kancey is the next Brock Lesnar. You heard it here first. But you got Lamar Woodley as the top player. And Lamar Woodley, obviously, amazing career for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most part. I think he finished with Arizona. But Kancey was a big-time winner. It's going to be very interesting to see how he's utilized in the NFL. The last one. That was just, everyone's talking about it. We have Adetomiwa Adebawore, defensive end for Northwestern, 282 pounds. Let's refresh this here. Can we get some color? 282 pounds. We got 27 in the bench. Pretty solid. Solid. Elite explosion. Elite speed. 9 TFLs, 5.5 sacks last year. It's Northwestern. Kind of a mid-school. But that athletic profile is truly disgusting. Now, we have him here classified as a defensive end. 282 pounds. That's where it's you're likely going to be a defensive end. I saw that football guy, that football guy, TFG. No, great guy. He said kind of reminds him of Michael Bennett. That's probably the role he's likely going to play. That undersized defensive tackle, defensive end, NASCAR package type player. We got Nick Perry, former first-round pick of the Green Bay Packers. Got Milton Williams from Philly, definitely putting up those vibes. It's going to be interesting to see just really what role he's going to play. But the fact that you're 282 pounds and you ran a 4.48, you made some money. You absolutely made some money. I would love to see maybe classifying him as a defensive tackle. How much does that really shift everything up? He's going to be like a 10. Actually, he goes down. He's a 9.3 because of the size. 10, perfect 10 on the 40. Explosion grade is ridiculous. And then again, you get back into the Calijah Kancey type mold of Aaron Donald, Ed Oliver. I just think, so much right now is going on about Kancey being the next Ed Oliver prospect, Aaron Donald. Adebawore, you put him in D-tackle, very similar size profile as Kancey. He's right there along with him. Maybe not the production, but very interesting athlete. Absolutely a winner from yesterday's Combine. Now we're going to go to our first linebacker. And in my opinion, he was my linebacker one going into yesterday. And I'm happy that the Raz kind of attached to that. That's Jack Campbell, the linebacker from Iowa. He was my linebacker one. I thought a lot of people were overthinking it. Trenton Simpson from Clemson was there. He's probably the only guy that was consistently ahead. Some people would have Jack Campbell in that top 3. He was always my number 1. And it's not a shock. He had 125 tackles, 5.5 TFLs, 2 picks last year. It's 2012 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Dick Butkus Award winner for the best linebacker. He's hyped. It's not, this is some sleeper that came out of nowhere. But I just thought all along the safest pick for linebacker. 6'4", 250. You would have loved to see maybe a little bit better 40-yard dash, but 4.658, that ain't no problem. That ain't no problem. Elite explosion, elite agility, tackle machine, sideline to sideline, reads the game well. He's like the prototypical college linebacker, right? That's what he was at Iowa. You know, that guy that's just, you know what I'm saying, the lifer, the guy that's there for 6 seasons, gets 100 tackles. You probably don't think he has the best prospects going forward towards the NFL. That kind of was like what Jack Campbell did at Iowa, and then he just puts up these ridiculous numbers. So for me, was my linebacker 1, stays my linebacker 1. I just don't think there's a first-round linebacker in this year's draft class. Like I think you probably mid-second round, trending towards early third round. That's where you'd probably take a swing at Jack Campbell if you really need linebacker help, which, you know, obviously we'll slightly relate things back to the Philadelphia Eagles. They might be in the market for some linebacker help, assuming Kaiser White is going to hit the market. TJ Edwards is probably going to get paid big money by somebody other than Philadelphia. Jack Campbell alongside Nakobe Dean, that would be pretty interesting. Comps for Jack Campbell. We got TJ Watt here. Obviously, that's a little bit weird. I think Van Der Esch is probably one you could take to the bank. Good player, man. Linebacker 1, he balled out. And what looks like it's not going to be the strongest of linebacker classes, Jack Campbell, linebacker 1 for me. We have going to another edge rusher for a winner. We have Derick Hall, the defensive end from Auburn. 24 TFLs, 15 sacks over the last 2 seasons for Auburn. Very athletic, 4'5'7" and 250 pounds is really nice for him. So he put up a good day. Pro comp, top 1 is Cliff Averill, who had a hell of a career in the NFL. So that's kind of what you're looking for Hall. Made some money. He's probably going to go second round, maybe third round, and be a nice rotational pass rusher early on in his career. Guy that came out of nowhere. That I like to say that I knew a little bit about most of the guys that I'm talking about here today before the combine. One guy that I wasn't even really considering, even though he had a solid year, is the JUCO transfer Byron Young. Been at Tennessee for 2 years now. 23.5 TFLs, 12.5 sacks after jumping from JUCO. And just undersized freak athlete. 4'3", 38-inch vert. You know, you can't teach a lot of these things, guys. These are things that you don't learn on the X's and O's. Pro comps are pretty much all favorable. Ebiketie, great player. Drake Jackson, great player. Played some nice minutes last year as a rookie for the 49ers. Khalil Mack's a top fit. I don't know if it's necessarily Khalil Mack, but winner. He's a winner. Anytime you put up numbers like that, and you kind of go in, it's like, all right, you have some decent production in the SEC. Winner. Definitely improved your draft stock. Now, there was 2 kids from Louisville. We'll get to the first one here. Another, pretty much in line. We're just like, okay. Just one of those players where it's like, all right, you were productive. That's kind of all I knew about you going in. And then, like, oh, you're also pretty damn good athlete. We have Yasir Abdullah. 123 tackles, 31 TFLs, 19.5 sacks, 2 picks, 5 forced fumbles over the last 2 years for Louisville. Okay. That's pretty good production. And then you run a 4.47. You have elite explosion grade, elite speed grade. Your pro comp, maybe not the best pro comps, but you got Takeo Spikes in there, Ryan Shazier in there, the white Lawrence Taylor, if you watch enough of my Madden content, in Dennis Gardeck. But I think big winner, man. You put that kind of profile with that production that he's had at Louisville over the last 2 seasons. Congratulations. You made yourself some money. This guy here probably going to go late day 2, early day 3 now. As going into this, might have been late day 3 type pick. So he made some money. Congratulations. We are now going to talk about another winner, a former 5-star recruit, Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. 4 TFLs, 2.5 sacks in 2022. But at least he showed off why he was a 5-star recruit. Usually the 5-star recruits are the kids that are ridiculously athletic. Didn't really develop his game a whole lot there at South Carolina, but he has, it's cliche, but one of those guys that probably has his best football ahead of him once he makes the jump to the NFL. We have very good speed, very good elite explosion. Wish the agility was a little better. Probably wish the bench press was a little bit better. 22 is not the greatest, but the pro comps are favorable for Zach Pickens. You got Gerald McCoy and Nick Fairley. It's kind of the big 2 up there. And anytime you're in that type of competition, anytime you have the pedigree of a 5-star recruit, you're going to get drafted particularly high. So I think Zach Pickens made himself a little bit of money here today. Might have shaved a round off of where he was going to go in the draft. Anytime you get those former 5-star recruits, you're always going to be pretty intrigued. Isaiah Foskey had a lot of hype. He's a lot of hype. He's a guy that's a fringe first rounder going into the combine, and I think he helps solidify his stock if he goes in the first round. He's one of those guys already. I can already feel it in my plums that I could see Philadelphia drafting. I don't know. He's one of those guys who it's like I wouldn't be mad at this pick. I'm glad that he's a decent athlete. Like his tape kind of reminded me of Derek Barnett a little bit. Do we want another Derek Barnett? I don't know. That's a tough question. That's tough. That's a tough one to answer because Derek Barnett's still on the roster and he's still a little bit underwhelming. But Foskey, decent athlete here. Actually, I'm going to do a comparison here in just 1 second to Derek Barnett because that's who I kind of was. Because Foskey and Keon White. Keon White's another guy that maybe throwing the I don't knows at the beginning of the video. He's another guy that's getting some potential first round buzz. Was known as an athlete. Didn't test yesterday. Like those are the two guys that, like I'm worried a little bit about. And usually those are the ones that like Philly ends up drafting. But Foskey tested out very well. Got the Javon Curry, like excellent comps. Very good comps. Oh, like that practice squad player on the Eagles there, Janarius Robinson. But I would actually love to get a comparison here. Foskey to Derek Barnett. So on this Raz site, you have an option to straight up just compare players. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go Foskey. Right there. Boom. And I want to go Derek Barnett. Yeah. That uses your mind a little bit, right? Tape right there, tape reminds me of this. Testing, almost twice as good. So that's outstanding there. Eases my mind right there. I just literally eased my mind in this video. So Foskey helped himself out, in my opinion. Going to another linebacker that won. I don't think it's going to be a particularly good linebacking class. We have Overshown from Texas, see-ball, get ball. This is a guy, 13 and a half TFLs. No, sorry, that was Foskey. Foskey had 13 FTFLs, 10 sacks last year, so productive. Back-to-back years, I think, of double-digit sacks for him at Notre Dame. So he has the proven pedigree. There's a reason why he was considered late first-round pick. And with that combine, I think he earned it. Demarvion Overshown here. 96 tackles, 10 TFLs, 4 sacks, 5 PBUs last year. Converted safety. I remember when he was like a high school recruit, and I was making him in draft classes. I was like, this guy's going to be a freak of nature. Kind of tested out as such. 8.5 in the Raz is like kind of the cutoff of like a good athlete. The comps aren't the best. They aren't really going in his favor. It's one of those linebacking classes where I guess if you're an athlete, you're going to get a little bit of a bump because teams are going to be like, all right, well, the profile is there. But I'm seeing a lot of guys that are going to be like contributing on special teams before they are like seeing meaningful snaps on starting on the defense. But Overshown did help out. I think this is just more a comment on a weak linebacking class that the better athletes are going to kind of stand out. Another one would be Pappoe. Former 5-star recruit here out of Auburn. Congrats on being like the fast guy. That is going to help you out in a weak linebacker. You're going to stand out as the athlete. I see a guy, when you look at it, had obviously a massive hit in the Penn State game against Clifford. But 4.39, anytime you run a 4.39, that helps out. He had 91 tackles, 3 TFLs, 2 sacks, and a pick last year as a former 5-star recruit. His comps, we got 2 players from last year's draft class, Christian Harris and Brian Asamoah. But in both those players, I think Harris played a little bit more, but like, you're getting guys that like are more special teams contributors than they are, immediate game changers on the defensive side of the ball. And I feel like Pappoe, Overshown kind of fall into. That's why I got Jack Campbell, linebacker 1. I think he's one of the few guys at that linebacker spot that's going to be able to be drafted and assumed to be able to start as a rookie at the linebacker spot. So I think someone like Pappoe, you're going to be getting on a great athlete, 6 feet tall, 225. He's another one of those guys that's like, big safety, small linebacker in that bubble. But great athlete, should be able to get immediate contributions on special teams. Another winner. We didn't have a lot of winners from my Florida Gators, but Gervon Dexter has been great. He's literally the last 5-star recruit I remember Florida getting. 6'6", 310, 4.88 in the 40, and the explosion grades are really, really good. Production was not really there, but the Gators defense has been embarrassingly bad. 55 tackles, 4 TFLs, 2 sacks in 2022. But Dexter, probably going to go 3rd round. Probably one of my favorite mid-round D tackles in this year's draft class. I think he can do a lot of things. I think he's very versatile. Great comp getting Kevin Williams. Remember that? For the Minnesota Vikings, the Williams wall. Kevin and Pat Williams, I think it was. Rest of the comp's actually not the best for him. But Roosevelt Nix, wasn't that a fullback? Is that like this? Did he have a kid that was like the fullback on the Steelers for a little bit? But either way, Dexter helped himself out. I think, and it's one of those questions as a Gator fan. I don't want to be too biased. I don't know how high his ceiling might have just went after balling out of the combine. I don't think he was ever really going to be a true first round prospect. He might have solidified himself going in the second round, like the next group of D linemen. So that's good for him. Another winner that had to test well was Bryan Bresee, the D tackle from Clemson. Did not have the best of seasons at Clemson last year. No one's going to fault him for that. Obviously, was going through a lot and has had battled injuries. But as a freshman, looked like a future number 1 overall pick. 5-star recruit, has all the hype. And I think he helped himself out yesterday. Elite speed. Again, we'd like to see better than 22 reps on the bench press, but it kind of is what it is. For the pro comps, we got Kevin Williams, Leonard Williams. You'll take both those. You will definitely take both those for Bryan Bresee. I think he's still maybe a little bit overrated on the mock draft sites. If you're looking at it, you just base who's going where off those common mock sites. If you do a lot of mock drafts like I do, I think he's still maybe a little bit overvalued, but he's, late first round pick in my opinion. But you're getting a guy that likely has his best football ahead of him, that's just a trope for former 5-star recruits that might not have had the most production in college. But I think that's very much the case here for Bryan Bresee. Great interior pass rusher, and first rounder. We're going to take a look here now at my second edge rusher going into yesterday. My second grade edge rusher behind Will Anderson. I had Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. 6'5", 270. Elite speed, great agility. Okay, I wish the explosion action was a little bit better. The vertical is a little underwhelming. But, 10.5 TFLs, 6 sacks last year for Iowa. Younger player, I think he's sophomore, redshirt sophomore. You got Ziggy Ansah, Jared Allen, Trey Hendrickson. You got even Travon Walker making a comp. I think, I don't know how much is going to change for me to have to knock him off as my number 2 edge. Great power move. Really good power move. Wins a lot with power, which is weird because, when you win with power, the bull rush, you would expect the explosion to maybe, at least switch with the agility. I didn't really see an amazingly agile type player, but I think he's a very good player, very high ceiling. And after this, 9.22 on the RAS scale, firmly still in that spot for my edge 2 for this year's draft class. Our last winner, we're going to take a look at Yaya Diaby. We already talked about Yasir Abdullah from Louisville, kind of just being known for production, and holy shit, you tested well at the combine. Diaby, another guy, had big-time production at Louisville. 14 TFLs, 9 sacks last year. And then he just went to the combine, 4.51. 263 pounds, 4.51, with a 1.5, 10-yard split, 37-inch vertical. Okay, you made yourself some money. Boy Mafe, Tyquan Lewis, sure. Mafe comp makes a little bit more sense. Feel like could go similar range. Mafe was mid-round pick for the Seattle Seahawks. Feel like didn't have the most opportunities last year to make a lot of plays for that defense, that needs pass rush help. But I think Diaby probably can find himself in a somewhat similar range given what he put on tape last year at Louisville and how well he tested. 9.8 in the RAS. Congratulations, Diaby. You made yourself some money. Now it is time for the doom and gloom of the video. So this is going to be players I thought was underwhelming. I'm going to start with Ika, the nose tackle from Baylor. Now, at two things. One is he's a nose tackle. I didn't expect him to light the combine out. He's 335 pounds. There's a certain element to what he does on the defense, which is ruin the run game for the opposing offense. But I don't know. I don't want to even say it's biased. I was just like, man, he kind of has some vibes of what Vita Vea did for Washington. Like, Vita Vea just wrecked games as a run defender. Ika wrecked games as a run defender, but the comp couldn't be anything further from the truth. That is, Vita Vea was always going to be a better athlete because he played like running back in high school. I just did not think the gap was going to be this big. I thought Ika would be pulling like a 7, high 7 on the RAS. A 2 was a little bit underperforming, but it's probably not going to tank his draft stock too much because, he's a run defender. I don't care how fast my run defender is. Just you eat space, a space eater. But it might affect his draft stock a little bit. People might, maybe there's a little bit of debate between him and Mazi Smith, who was the top nose tackle in this year's draft class. Well, they might, the writing might be on the wall on that one. We want to take a look here at Henry To'oTo'o, another guy. Some people might have him as one of the top linebackers. Some sites still have him as one of the top linebackers in this year's draft class. Production is there. For sure, 205 tackles, 15.5 TFLs, 6.5 sacks in his 2 years at Alabama after transferring from Tennessee. Production is there. Athletically speaking, though, not the best, which is weird. Usually Alabama has like a certain profile of a linebacker, right? And doesn't really fit that mold. The pro comps aren't the best. Not a lot there for Toto. And I think that just kind of highlights this linebacking class being a little bit underwhelming. I feel like a lot of shots in the dark, a lot of special teams contributors, and that's not what you want to say because there's a lot of teams out there that are looking for linebacking help. Another loser, fortunately, from my Gators is Brenton Cox Jr. I can kind of see why he transferred from Georgia because Georgia, if you're not an S-tier athlete, Georgia doesn't want you. Former 5-star recruit, 32 and a half TFLs, 13 sacks in his 3 years at Florida. Really, those were only like 2 full years. So his production was there. I was, maybe this was just, and maybe I'm only highlighting this because of my Gator bias a little bit. I thought he'd be a little bit better than this. I thought him and Dexter were both going to have pretty good days. Wasn't the best from Brenton Cox. Now, the pro comp, you get pro comp to T-Sizzle. Could be a lot worse. But wasn't the best day for a guy that I thought would be, anytime you get those 5-star kids, you're going to be like, all right, let's see something crazy. Like, if you're a 5-star recruit, anything less than like an 8 Raz, probably going to be disappointing. And that's kind of the box that Brenton Cox has fell in here to today. But I still think he's a really nice power rusher and will get drafted. But now, unfortunately, it might be day 3 at some point. Last negative, and it's a fringe negative, but the last negative, I have Noah Sewell. P.N.I. Sewell's brother was a guy that he needed to have like S-tier, an S-tier type day. He needed to have a Jack Campbell type day here for testing because only 2 years in college, question marks. Maybe he left early, but he wanted to make that jump to the NFL. And, weird, but he's always had like a weird old school build. I think he was like 260 at some point, build at 260 anyways, which is like, that's a linebacker from 2001. But I was hoping to see just maybe a little bit more freaky of an athlete. Obviously, Sewell is a freak athlete. And this is not bad, 8.6, or, that's still good, right? You throw some comps in here. A.J. Klein had a long career in the NFL. Bobby Carpenter, the general. Not brutal, but I would say he's not more so in the loser. It's just maybe I was a little bit underwhelmed by what Sewell. And I say this, a lot of these things, anytime we talk about college players, we'll relate back to the Eagles. Eagles are going to be the market for a linebacker in this year's draft. And I feel like after this combine, the list of linebackers that I would feel comfortable them drafting is very small. It has definitely shrunk up a little bit, like what I'm going to be in about 10 minutes when I got to go snow blow about fucking 20 inches of snow outside my house right now. I'm going to be shrinking up a little bit like Sewell here a little bit. So, I mean, that's probably my kind of question is where do you guys kind of rank the linebackers now in this year's draft class? You look at some of these guys. This is like before the combine, right? Before the combine, I can kind of see all these, the D linemen here. Makes sense. But the linebackers, I don't think there's going to be a lot of shuffling amongst the D linemen. I think Jalen Carter will go first. I think even with, I think he'll go first. Still more news can break on that. Maybe Kancey, maybe the hype from Kancey will propel him to the second D lineman. I think Mozzie Smith will probably go ahead of Ika now for the nose tackle. Tuipulotu was listed at 290 for USC, measured in yesterday 266. I always had him as like a defensive end because I think he's going to be a 3-4 end. Still, that was a little bit ridiculous. Zach Pickens probably helped himself up a couple spots here on the board. Some of these D linemen, I know, Dante Stills clearly I think will be a defensive end. Jalen Redmond, both those guys tested well. They might help themselves a little bit, but again, they're not true defensive tackles. They're D linemen, which is fair to say. For the edge rushers, again, I don't know. Nolan Smith might be the guy. Right now, he had him at 28. That's exactly why I've been getting him at pick 30 for the Eagles in the mock drafts that I've been doing. You could probably propel him up there, but at this rate, is he gonna? How high are both these guys gonna go? Because I definitely think they've helped their draft stock. But I don't think there was a lot of big movement as it relates to the edge rushers. Like you're going way down here. I mean, Diaby probably helped himself out, being better than 185. You can see Robert Beal tested out very well for Georgia. Someone might like that athleticism a little bit as you work your way down. But the big question for me is at the linebacker spot. How is all this going to play out? Dorian Williams tested well. He should jump up a little bit. Owen Pappoe just Overshown and Pappoe here, just from a speed standpoint, people are going to fall in love with them. Drew Sanders didn't test. That's an interesting one. I would love to see him test. Simpson didn't test bad, but I've always just kind of had Jack Campbell as my top linebacker anyways. I think yesterday will help feed into that narrative a little bit. But it's a weird linebacking class, man. Like Herbig's a lot. He's more of a pass rusher than he is a linebacker. Land, more of a pass rusher than he is a linebacker. It's just not a great year to be looking for linebacker help, I don't think. Unless you really fall in love with one of these guys, or unless you can find a way to get Jack Campbell, or all eyes are going to be on Drew Sanders at that Arkansas Pro Day to see where he kind of falls in line with these linebackers. But day one is in the books. I think obviously some obvious winners. Losers maybe a little bit more difficult. I think generally it was a pretty good day. Day one of the Combine. Today is the biggest day that I've been waiting for, though. Defensive backs. As an Eagle fan, we need help in all those areas. Safety, corner. Let's see some fast times. Let's see Devin Witherspoon. Let's see Christian Gonzalez. Let's see Joey Porter. Let's see all these Cam Smith. Let's see all these guys run 4.3s. So that, like a lot of people are saying right now, there's about 10 first-round corners. Let's see it. Let's see these freaks. I want this class at corner to be ridiculously strong because linebacker is a little bit underwhelming. But let me know what you guys think about all this stuff in the comment section below. Who are your big winners and losers from day one in the Combine? Let me know below. I'll see you guys back here maybe tonight, likely tomorrow, with a recap of day 2 of the NFL Combine. First time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys back in the next one. Peace out.